Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. Today I'd like to continue my discussion or really testimony of Divine Providence. Thankfully, this was something that my parents modeled for me as I was a child, and they may not have even noticed or known that they were modeling it for me or that I was watching and understanding. Anyway, I came from a very middle class family and we lived probably most of my childhood paycheck to paycheck. I noticed at one point, I was probably maybe a preteen or maybe early teens, when I would go into my mom's closet. At one time, she had exactly 5 outfits, one for each day of the week, and then maybe a couple of dresses and a pair of nice shoes for church on Sunday. But she would just wear the same things over and over again so that she could buy my brother and myself, nice clothes to wear to church on Sunday. Of course, there were uniforms for school, and then you had to have play clothes after that. So I saw her sacrificing for, love of us so that we could have. Now, I remember also us taking a wonderful big family vacation. We didn't vacation a lot. I mean, I could count on one hand the vacations that we went on as a family. But before I started high school, my parents had saved up, for quite some time and took us to Disney World. And um, it was an amazing trip. Sadly, I was a little stinking self-centered teenager who had just had a breakup with a boyfriend, like, I don't know, we went out and did something twice. But anyway, it was the first fellow that I was just, head over heels about. And we had just broken up. So sadly, my parents had saved all that money to take us on that trip. And I was a little brat the whole time. And I feel badly for that. What can I say? Anyway, the point was that we lived paycheck to paycheck. And growing up, I mean, I guess I never thought of that as being a blessing. And even early in my marriage, I didn't always think of living paycheck to paycheck as a blessing. In fact, I looked around at some of the other people around me, people I worked with, people in my neighborhood, who were taking multiple vacations a year or, seemed to have nicer things than we did or a nicer home or definitely nicer cars because um, we've always gotten, thanks be to God, we've always gotten hand-me-down cars. So we haven't had too many, maybe one or two new ones our whole married life. But anyhow, the point is that I didn't always see that as a blessing. But, with age comes wisdom. And that's one good thing about aging, wisdom. And when I look back, I see this kind of lifestyle as a blessing because if we had a lot, if we made a lot, then we would perhaps, not certainly, but perhaps be thinking that it's all us. Look what we did. Um, we might think we don't need God because we got it all covered. But living paycheck to paycheck does something for your faith life, and that is it keeps you on your knees, which is not a bad thing at all. Not a bad thing at all. So I wanted to share with you something that I guess recently happened in the last couple of years. I felt in prayer the Lord telling me to leave the job that I was in, that I had been in for, oh my gosh, 18, 19 years, a place where I definitely felt comfortable. And in prayer, I felt like He was telling me, jump, Dana, and I will catch you. Jump and I will catch you. Well, by this time, after living a lifetime of complete dependence on God's divine providence, I had come to a level of trust that I could say, okay, Lord, if you say jump, I'm going to say, how high? If you say jump and I'll catch you, I'm going to jump. And I know that you're going to catch me. Well, I let the school know that I would not be returning the following year. And I knew that I had to make an income. We were not going to be able to make our bills if I did not get another job, but I had no idea where God was leading me. Did He want me to continue to teach? Did He want me to do something else? I had no clue. I had no clue. I remember one of the last retreats that I had planned for children, for students, was held at the Teresian convent. And I had become friends, I guess, more than acquaintances, with the head sister there. She would come greet me whenever I was setting up. And of course, I'd see her at the end of the day when I was checking out. And so over the years of going there and taking the kids there, I had shared, things that were going on in my own family, and I would ask this sister to pray, and she always assured me that she would. And so I confided in her that I was kind of at this point where I felt that the Lord was calling me away, but I did not know what was going to happen in the future. So she invited me to stay after this last retreat, after I cleaned up, and to come meet this elderly nun who kind of does, I guess you'd say, some spiritual direction, or, maybe she has some insights. And so she brought me into her home, and she went and got this sister. And the sister came and sat down, and oh my gosh, she was delightful. And I mean, like, she was beaming with peace and joy and love of God. And she just seemed so, so full of joy. And I wanted what she had. Anyway, I told her what was going on in my life and that I felt like God was calling me to jump and that He would catch me. And she says, "Oh, wait right here. I'll be right back." So she went up to her bedroom and she had this photocopied quote or story from Henry Nouwen on her wall. And so she made a photocopy of it for me and highlighted part of it. And she handed it to me and she says, I think you need to read this. I think this is meant for you. And basically, it was the story of a trapeze artist. And in the story, God was the catcher of the trapeze artist. And what they made clear was that if the person, the trapeze artist, doing the leaping or the jumping toward the catcher, if the trapeze artist tried to lock onto the hands or catch the catcher, then the whole act, the whole thing would be messed up. And in fact, both, you could be severely injured. When you think of a circus and trapeze artists and the swing from the ceiling and everything, if the person tries to catch the catcher, disaster is going to happen. So the trapeze artist has to take a leap of faith. They have to completely trust the catcher in order for, the circus act, to go off as planned. So I thought it was very, very interesting, and that it was a neat confirmation of prayer that God had planned just for me through this elderly nun. It was so amazing and so beautiful the way God, takes care of us and gives us those little breadcrumbs along the way. So anyhow, I finished the school year. We had just moved into a new home. We were downsizing since our oldest children, were moving off or had moved off. We didn't need as much room, and so we had downsized. And I was busy painting furniture and trying to keep myself busy. And it was a couple of weeks until the end of August, and my last paycheck from that school where I quit was going to be coming, and then that was going to be it. What was I going to do after that? Well, I had put in applications at places where I thought I might like to work, and I got no callbacks, and I'm like, does my resume look that bad? I mean, I think I'm pretty reputable. It shows that I'm loyal, that I stay in one place for a long time. I'm, a hardworking employee. What is up? So I remember August 8th, like I said, just a week or two before my last paycheck would come, I get this call from a woman that I used to work with, and she said that they were looking for a fifth grade teacher. Her school was looking for a fifth grade teacher, and would I like to come interview? This was at a nearby public school that had a very good reputation. But nonetheless, I don't know, when I left teaching, I was thinking maybe God had a new adventure for me, something different. And so when she called and asked if I wanted to interview, I was kind of like, not really. But if I had been praying about what God wanted me to do, I was going to have to go to this interview to see if indeed, this was the answer. So I went, and I thought that the interview went fairly well. And then their last question to me was, why did you choose to interview with us? And I told them that for me it was a God thing, that I had been praying and that I had to come. I felt like I had to come because if this was God's answer, if I didn't come, I wouldn't know. And then when I left the interview, I thought, oh my goodness, I have just blown this. I went to a public school and I talked all about God. So I was like, okay, scratch that. And very strangely, the next day around noon, I was in my car, I was driving, and I got a call and they offered me the job. And I was flabbergasted, totally flabbergasted. So I don't know. I could go on to talk about the lessons that I learned from that experience, and I think that would be for another video. But I just wanted to share my story with you. There's a favorite Bible story I have, and it's a very favorite one of my husband's, and that is the story of Gideon when he is going up against, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the Midianites. And God keeps telling him, you have too many army members. And Gideon is like, Lord, don't you see all of the Midianites there are? There are thousands of them. And you're telling me that 300 is too many for the fight? And the Lord was like, yep, you have to, make cuts. And he was to follow them down to the river and see which ones drank with cupped hands and which ones drank like dogs. It sounds crazy. But that's how he was to choose who was going to remain in the army. And anyway, the whole point of the thing was so that Gideon and his men would know that it was the victory was not because of anything they did. If you look at it, it was statistically impossible that Gideon and his few warriors would win against the thousands of Midianites, but they did. And it was all God. And God had to take that, the extras away from them so that they would see that they really had nothing to do with it. They just had to obey and show up. And God would make a way where there is no way. And I think that's a lesson for us. God can make a way where there is no way. We've got to simply show up, obey, and trust in Him completely. I hope that you've enjoyed this and that it has encouraged you in some way or inspired you in another way. If you think this message could be of benefit to someone who's struggling right now, then I encourage you please to share it, and of course to pray for that person. I'm praying for you, and I ask that you please continue to pray for me. God bless.